welcome back. Tonight, whatever time it is right now. um, we're going to be talking about a project on Kickstarter. It's called Sticks and Stones, and with us at the moment is Alex Schumacher, and we're going to talk about the project, find out about the campaign, and anything else that might come up. So let me bring him in and I'll let him introduce himself when I do.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Alex. How's it going?
It's going great, man. Thank you for having me on.
No, well, thanks for taking the time to come on. And I know that we try to help out Jeff, as much as we can with, the people that he's working with. And
Yeah.
so he hasn't steered me wrong yet. So don't mess it up.
Yeah, hopefully I don't ruin that track record tonight.
So before we get started talking about the Kickstarter and the book, tell us a little bit about yourself, both as a comic book reader and as a creator.
Yeah, I'm Alex Schumacher. So on Schticks and Stones, I'm the artist, and I kind of co-created the characters and the world with Aaron Cohen, who's the writer. But I've been working as a cartoonist in some form since about 2015. Started with some web comics, some slice of life stuff, and have recently sort of steered more into children's literature, graphic novels for the book market and middle grade and younger audiences. So I've had the pleasure and the honor of working with places like Paper Cuts and working on some of the IP characters there, and working with some other publishers to develop some other graphic novels. But one of the sort of switches that flipped that kind of led to this was right after my first middle grade book had come out is when I met Aaron. Was introduced through a mutual friend named Tony Wolf, who's also a great cartoonist. And so I was trying out kind of this new style. So it's been constantly about experimentation for me and kind of finding new ways to create and tell stories and new people to tell those stories with. So I've been fairly lucky so far in that most of the people that I've worked with have been wonderful partners and collaborators in that, and Aaron is no different in that regard. But I have done quite a bit on my own as well, and hopefully I still have some other stories to tell as well.
So do you remember maybe the first comic book you read, or the one that made an impression on you that made you want to continue to read them and then get into the life?
Yeah, for sure. There's this story I have about my aunt my mother's sister who was living with us for a while, and during my upbringing, and she had this garbage bag, a literal garbage bag full of like silver and golden age comics. And I ended up going through that, and I was finding, this is when they were serializing like Wuthering Heights in comics form, and it was all the old romance books. There was old like Archie's and Harvey comics, so all of that was just sort of transformational to rifle through and read. But the one title that I think really sticks in mind that hit pretty early was, I think it was Batman 222, and I might be wrong, but it was sort of a play on the Beatles' Paul is Dead hoax, and they had a Beatles-esque band and the same kind of thing going on, and they were trying to solve the mystery behind, who was dead, who was alive, and that one, got its hooks in very early. And I remember, graduating from that to like the Batman 66 series, which was in syndication when I was a kid. I think it was on like the Family Channel, which doesn't even exist anymore. That's how old I am. But
I'm right there with you. So
yeah, in our youth, and you know what? I gotta tell you, we got some cool stuff, and like Batman 66 was fun. But my gateway into that was definitely the older comics, and I got lucky, to read a lot of those early on, just because of that, sort of transient looking bag full of goodness that my aunt had. And yeah, and also another thing was the other one that was a big informative and inspirational book was the Smithsonian collection of newspaper comics, which my grandparents gave me when I was quite young. It was one of those gigantic, oversized coffee table books that I don't know if
Mhm.
really in existence anymore. But it had all the classics in it, and it had Pogo by Walt Kelly, which is a huge inspiration of mine, and obviously Peanuts, and so I just fell in love with newspaper comics, and that has sort of informed a lot of what I've done since too, even now.
So let's get into Sticks and Stones. Kind
Yeah.
of give us the elevator pitch, and we'll go from there.
Our elevator pitch is Schticks and Stones is a riotous romp through three Jewish holidays, Purim, Hanukkah, and Passover, that'll make your booby plots. So it's these little, that's the elevator pitch. And so each story is sort of this little mini mystery that we have surrounding this gigantic, gregarious, boisterous family that I think a lot of people will relate to.
And what was kind of the inspiration behind the behind it?
Aaron came to me with the idea and the characters and sort of this um, sort of idea for some stories when we were introduced by our mutual friend. And from there, it obviously started. The germ was in his mind, and it was very much based on his family and his experiences with them during the holidays. And coming from similar backgrounds in like Ashkenazi Jewish lineage, that's like not super religious, but the culture and the traditions are still
Mhm.
important to our families. Having those links, I think a lot of that made sense to me, and I saw a lot of my own family in it, and then sort of was injecting my own experiences and my own family quirks in there, and so together we just formed this amalgam of like Ashkenazi Jewish extended family, or mishpucha as they're called. But yeah, the Germans were there, and then we kind of crafted this fictional but familiar family together.
So who are the main characters in kind of how, I mean, you said it's a family, so I assume they're related.
Yeah. So it's the main narrator is a 12-year-old named Ben, who sort of fancies himself a mini Bugsy Siegel. He's very into mafia, and he wears these sort of oversized, pinstripe suits, and so he sort of contrives of these mysteries. He's a kid in these very sort of adult only situations to some degree, because when you're attending those holiday family functions, a lot of the times there's you're relegated to the kids table, and it's all this sort of separation idea. So Ben, I think, is trying to entertain himself to some degree by making up these narratives, and so these mysteries end up happening, and I like to kind of describe it as if Mel Brooks were to write a Scooby-Doo comic strip.
And so, both of you kind of write the story and plot it and all that, or
Um,
how
Aaron
does?
is Aaron's the writer, and I'm the artist. And we have Ralph Singh, who is our letterer and colorist. And
Mhm.
so there is sort of the delineation between duties to some degree, but we also work very very closely. And we're kind of up each other's noses when we're working on these stories. Giving each other like suggestions and recommendations, maybe trying this, which great collaborations often do, because you get those outside opinions, and it tends to accentuate the better parts of those stories or songs or whatever it may be. um, and so I think while we do have sort of our individual roles, it's very much a collaborative and team effort, and we are big on sort of making sure the team is credited for everything. That's an important thing to us.
And how did you meet Aaron? Because am I right that you guys have worked together on the Cloakroom, the Scott Snyder kind of from his class thing with, is it Jerry Carnita?
Jerry Carita, yeah. So Aaron was actually a student of Scott Snyder, and still, Scott will apparently continue to read some of his students or advise on student stories and writings because Aaron still kind of has that plug to him, which is cool. So that was the in for the anthology because it is specifically for students, to feature students of Scott Snyder, and oftentimes they're debut writers. And I can't remember if it was his first, but Aaron comes from a TV film production background. So he's just started in comics recently, and that might have been his first published thing as well. I had sort of been around toiling in obscurity. Now I'm just in like relative obscurity. I've been working on comics for a while, and again, we just got introduced through a friend. I think he had reached out to Tony Wolf again. I think he had reached out to him maybe to see if he wanted to provide the art or if he knew anybody, and that's when Tony connected us, and we chatted and realized we had a lot of similar sensibilities as far as humor and storytelling and kind of the vibe that we wanted to our comics, which is very old school Harvey comics and very much Saturday morning cartoon inspired, and we really want to play up the humor and the funny of it. So we realized we had a lot of that in common, and it was clear pretty early on that we were going to gel pretty well together.
Nice. So why don't we talk about a little bit about the Kickstarter itself, and then we'll kind of get into some more of the other things. So.
Yeah. So the Kickstarter launched yesterday morning, quite early. And I don't say this in any kind of humble brag sort of way. We're legitimately surprised by this. We have funded in 6 hours, and then probably a couple hours ago we got emails from Kickstarter saying we're one of their projects that they love. So I feel like we're off to a pretty good start in that regard. But we have
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of wild to us. I'm processing that in a way, but it's very cool to have that support. But we have a lot of really cool rewards tiers that we've cooked up. We've got like books that you could buy with remarks from me. You can get commissions from me or Ralph. We have Mike Kunkel as a guest variant artist, which if anybody knows him from Hero Bear and the Kid or Shazam, Billy Bashing and the Magic of Shazam from DC. So his style just kind of fits perfectly with what we're doing. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Perfectly with what we're doing. He has that great kid, all ages friendly vibe to what he's doing. So yeah, we have a lot of cool stuff, and early bird. We're kind of pushing the early bird rewards right now because those will end at 3:00 tomorrow morning. Pacific. So yeah, so we're kind of pushing that because we had it 48 hours from when we launched. So again, that'll end at 3 a.m. tomorrow morning Pacific time. So if you want to get early bird rewards, we have a lot of cool discounts going on. We have some packages that people can get. So if they want to jump on that, still have time. But I urge people, if they're interested, to check that out. Before tomorrow morning.
So is this your first experience with Kickstarter, or have you been involved in projects before?
My only involvement before has been with the Cloakroom. So it was in a much more freelance capacity. So this is definitely the first one that either Aaron or I have been in charge of running in any way, shape, or form. And we hired, we have a little team with us that we brought on to a production artist and manager for the page, so we could sort of focus more on the creative. And they've been huge help in sort of being our Sherpas because of the fact that this is all new to us. And but it's been a fun ride so far. So we went from just sort of being in the freelance, of anthologies on Kickstarter and not having to stress over the the promotion and the optics and the whatever. So this is our first foray into that, which has been eye-opening in a lot of ways.
So, what have you done? You mentioned that you've done work for Paper Cuts. What have you worked on over there?
Yeah, so last year the Flash Gordon Adventures Volume 2 book came out, and that was a continuation of the one that came out in 2024 from Art Balthazar. So the
Mhm.
one that came out last year was an anthology style follow up. So Adam Walenta, a friend of mine who's the
Yep,
senior editor over there, he
I
reached
know
out.
it.
Oh, yeah. So he,
Great
super
guy.
guy, wonderful guy, and he reached out to me and asked if I wanted to take part, and that was my first project for them. And so then I also contributed to his Punk Taco book that
Yep.
just came out earlier this year, and hopefully maybe talking to them about doing some other projects coming up. So it's he's keeping me in his virtual Rolodex, as it were. uh, which is nice. That's a nice publishing home to have if you can get it. So I'm
Hmm.
definitely not complaining. But I've done that with them. Um, and I did have like I said, a middle grade graphic novel came out in 2024 called Effects of Pickled Herring, and it was, funny enough, it was kind of in the same vein as what Aaron and I are doing, because it's sort of a Jewish family, very much focusing on the family aspect and the cultural aspect as opposed to anything else. But that came out in 2024. So what I did with Aaron was kind of right on the heels of that. It just felt kind of like the right move at that point, because I was already kind of waltzing down that road. It's always better to dance with a partner. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. But that's kind of takes us up. Those are the most recent things I've done.
So, how when you're doing your art, how do you work? Do you work traditionally, uh, digitally, or kind of a hybrid?
Uh, a very small hybrid, with it being about 80 to 90% traditional, and then clean up and things like that in Photoshop. I mean, that's just kind
Okay.
of necessity these days, because you have to make everything digital at some point, because that's how the publishers take the files for print and such. So I think there's still a group of us who are being dragged screaming and kicking into more of a digital realm, but the drawing is all still done traditionally. I use brush pens, brushes, crystal board, non-photo blue pencils, pretty basic stuff. uh, but it's just that feeling. It's a and I think I just have to find the right machine. But there's a disconnect that I have found when I've tried to draw digitally, where it's not quite giving me the same feel as a pen. And I know there's a lot of great programs out there, and I'm certainly not um, dunking on digital artists, because they there's a ton of digital artists doing amazing stuff. It just hasn't sort of clicked for me as of yet. So I've been experimenting a little with some like iPad Pro and stuff, but I still just I grew up. That was how I came up, drawing traditionally, because we didn't have iPads and digital and Cintiqs when I
Yeah.
was younger. As far as I'm concerned, that's very new technology. So there's a familiarity there, I guess, which is comforting. So I still enjoy that. And then you have to think about the financial side to some degree, and part of it is you have those pages to sell. Whereas
Right.
when you digitally, you could sell prints, and I'm sure people can make money that way too. But original traditional art tends to bring in some decent bucks for people if you can make a little name for yourself. So it's good to have that too.
So, are there any artists, be they comic book artists or some other medium, that kind of influence your work, or who inspire you to push your comfort zone and when you're drawing?
Oh, for sure. I think earlier on, like I said, influences were more, Saturday morning cartoon stuff and newspaper comics. So I was very into Bill Watterson. Oh, buddy, I know Bill Watterson is great. He's just overcome with emotion from Calvin and reminiscing. But Bill Watterson is a big one for me. Hi, buddy. Bill Watterson is a big one. Like I said, Pogo. Oh, buddy. Pogo. So Walt Kelly. Um, uh, Mort Walker did Beetle Bailey.
Hmm.
All those classic guys were big in when I was younger, and then I sort of took a break from comics for a little while, and I got into music. So I was a musician in a former life, And when I got back into it was because I discovered Mike Allred, who did Madman, and from there found all the Fantagraphic stuff and Drawn and Quarterly, and like Seth who did Palookaville, and Linda Barry, and just all those wonderful artists. So that's kind of what brought me back in, because when I was coming up, it was people like Buddy. It was people like Todd McFarlane, it was Jim
Mhm.
Lee. These like pages just drowning in line work, and my brain kind of broke when I would look at it, because in my head I'm thinking I can't do this, right? But as I got older, you find alternative comics, and cartooning, comics art, whatever you want to call it, comes in all shapes, sizes, forms, and that was a good lesson for me to learn in my 20s, and so I could kind of you know just lean into my cartooning sensibilities, and the animation influence, put that on the page a little bit more, and not be quite as timid about trying to make it look photorealistic. Kind of, it's a knowing your limitations kind of thing, and accentuating the things that you do well. So those kind of books gave me that kind of boost, that kind of revved my engines to get back into comics. And then there's a bunch, and then since then, all these great graphic novels have come out, and so people nowadays, there's a guy named Rob Marks who does he does stuff with like Scholastic, and he has an account on Kickstarter. His work, it blows me away. Peach Momoko, I've seen her stuff. That artist blows me away. So there's people doing, and you could say like Daniel Warren Johnson is doing really innovative stuff. So there's people out there, doing a lot of cool things today, and the indie scene on Kickstarter too is full of super talented people that are supportive, and they've I think they tend to push you in new directions and to try new things that you may not have thought of before.
Yeah.
So those people have been really useful and helpful in that too. Yeah. Buddy. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah. Okay, this is real. Okay, sorry. So yeah, it's people coming up all the time, and Dan Parent for Archie is another one we love. Mike Kunkel was one guy I found in my 20s who blew me away too, and it's been, if I could go back and like high five my 22-year-old self, or tell them what was happening, that they probably, split a seat. It's pretty cool.
Well, talking about your younger self, if you could go back and give your younger self any advice that you know now, uh, what would that be?
It would be not to take things so seriously, and because I think there's a difference between taking your artistic venture seriously and taking the art itself too seriously. And I think for a long time I took the art too seriously, and was maybe drawing, maybe pursuing that for some wrong reasons. The advice to myself would just be to enjoy it, embrace the things that you love about fandom, the things that brought you to do this in the first place, and over more than anything else, enjoy what you're doing, because I think especially when you're young, it's easy to fall into those traps of like having stars in your eyes, and I'm going to be the next big whatever, and you just set yourself up for disappointment when that happens. And maybe it does or maybe it doesn't, but the most important thing is putting the work out there, or just producing work, because you can't get anywhere in this profession if you're not producing anything. So I think that would be the main thing I would tell myself, is just not take it too seriously and really have fun, and remember to have fun.
Are there any characters from any of the publishers that you would really like to have a chance to get to work on?
Yeah, I mean, as a Saturday morning cartoon kid, I'd love a run at the Ninja Turtles. I'd even love to do just a variant cover, for something like that. But there's a lot of really fun cartoon IP properties that like IDW and Boom and different places like that too, which would be fun. Hellboy would be. I don't know if I have the right artistic temperament for that, but Hellboy's always been one of my favorites. And even things like Shazam and like golden age superheroes, because because with Mike Allred, kind of gaining popularity and working at DC and Marvel, and or people like Scotty Young, I think they're embracing different styles a little bit more than maybe they used to. And
Mhm.
if I got a chance to work on one of those are all iconic characters, I think, to all of us who grew up loving comics. So I'm not going to pretend like I'm too cool for school and wouldn't jump at the work because I absolutely would. But yeah, a lot of the I think the cartoon properties I would love to work on, or if there was like a Looney Tunes kind of comic, or even if they brought Harvey back, I would absolutely work on something like Little Devil revival, or not Little Devil, what's it called? The little hot one or something.
Yeah, hot stuff.
Sorry, excuse me.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so there's several. I mean, as I ramble on, there's obviously a plethora of characters that I would love to work on if given the chance. Or like, Dynamite did like Mighty Mouse, because Mighty Mouse New Adventures was a big cartoon for me growing up, and it was where I found one of my most problematic faves, Mr. John Cryptofalusi, who went on to do Ren and Stimpy. But that caught me at a very formative age, and it's part of my DNA. There's no shaking it at this point. So something like even that, like a Mighty Mouse: The New Adventures would. So yeah, I just rambled off the laundry list.
Oh, that's fine.
If anyone's listening,
Is there anything that you wanted to make sure that people knew about the Kickstarter that maybe we didn't cover?
again, I think right now we're pushing the early bird rewards, and there's a lot of great discounts that are going to go bye-bye early tomorrow morning. So if you want, discounted commissions, like I said, there's tiers where Ralph and I are both doing commissions, characters of your choosing, so you can get the book and several other rewards. But you get a lot of money off right now, so if you want to go check that out, that'd be great. Otherwise, if they just want to check it out at some point, we like to think it's a really relatable family comic, basically a really relatable family comedy. So hopefully people will give it a chance and maybe see themselves in it, and as many eyes as we can get on it. That's right.
Well,
Yeah.
as we wrap up, you want to give one last pitch for the campaign and where people can find out more from you and Aaron?
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron and I are both on Instagram. We're both on Facebook. And the Schticks and Stones is on Kickstarter now. And it's three madcap mysteries with a Meshuggah family that's sure to make everybody laugh. And it's all family friendly, fun for the whole McGill, or the whole mishpucha, like I said. Yeah, and we would just love to connect with people and share these stories, because there's this sort of in a lot of immigrant communities and marginalized communities, there's these grand traditions of storytelling, and Aaron and I like to think in some weird way, some remixed way, we're sort of participating in that a little bit, and passing down some stories to future generations. So if anybody wants to help us do that, wants to be a part of it, we would love to have our family be a part of your family.
And is this like a one shot, or is there, if this does well, is there a plan to maybe do some more?
Yeah, so this is the holiday special, we're calling it. So it's the 3 stories with the holidays, but it is going to kick off an actual series. We just, wanted to throw people into the deep end and, give them the most chaotic scenarios possible to introduce these family characters. Because again, I think it'll feel very familiar very quickly, and maybe then gives them somebody to empathize with as well.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time this evening, and it was a pleasure chatting with you. And we will definitely be following the campaign over on Comic Watch in our weekly roundup that people should check out every Saturday at noon. And whenever you and Aaron have, or just you have something else that you would like to talk about and promote, then let us know, and we'll have you back. And
and I'll find a
No, thank
babysitter.
you. It was okay. I totally understand. So you're all good.
You've been very patient, and I appreciate that.
All right. Well, again, I'll let you get back to your uh, parental duties, and it was great chatting with you, and have a great evening.
You too, Chad. Thank you so much.